Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Very warm welcome to you all. My name is Namita Datta, and I'm the program head of Solutions for Youth Employment. It's a global program that's based here in the World Bank, and we are a team that's based in Washington, D.C. So very warm welcome to you all. I'm really excited about today's session. I'll say just a few very quick words about S4YE. Although I think most of you by now already know S4Y, we do these sessions fairly often, and they are usually well attended, and there's a good discussion. So S4Y stands for Solutions for Youth Employment. It's a global program that was created by the World Bank and brings together a large number of partners. And our focus is particularly to understand and learn from, in an ongoing way, innovations and new experiments, new models that are happening in the field of youth employment as we speak, and to really learn from them and to enable people and other practitioners to learn from each other. So we have a fairly large network. We have one part of our ecosystem we call it the impact portfolio. These are youth employment programs and projects that are run by different organizations. They are not World Bank operations. They're run by different NGOs and big organizations. Some of them are connected today. And they were selected through a careful selection process because each one of them is doing something or trying to do something innovative in the space of youth employment. And in S4Y, our big focus is on the practitioner, the real sort of the nuts and bolts of what goes into the design of an effective youth employment program. So this network that we call the Impact Portfolio is a community that we learn from quite a bit, and we learn from each other. The second part of S4Y's ecosystem is a network of private sector companies that are part of our network. They are lots of them are leading companies. Lots of them are leading technology companies like Microsoft and Facebook, and but also other large companies like Nestle, Accenture. They are part of our network. The third part of S4Y's network is a really important one. These are young people themselves. And we have what is called our youth advisory group. These are 17 young people that again were selected through a selection process. And they're all in very difficult parts of the world, have come through very difficult circumstances. They are young and yet have done something entrepreneurial or fairly remarkable with their young lives. And they are really inspiring us, and they bring that youth voice to all of the strategic work, and they're part of our board meetings. So that's an important part of S4Y. And the last component of what we as S4Y ecosystem and network is an internal one within the World Bank. The World Bank, the youth employment agenda is spread through different global technical practices. You can imagine that our colleagues in agriculture are working on youth employment. Our colleagues in education, global practice work on youth employment. Our colleagues in digital development work on youth employment. And so one thing that S4Y does is we've built this informal network of World Bank teams that are working on youth employment. And there are about 150 of them because we have 150 operations led by the World Bank. Collectively, the bank has invested or is investing right now 17 billion through our operations, and that it goes along with a lot of technical work, analytical work, and policy advice. So what we do fairly regularly in S4Y is every month, maybe sometimes even twice a month, we highlight and we shine the spotlight on one of our partners and something interesting that they are doing, something that we can learn from. And I'm so delighted that in today's session, we'll be able to shine the spotlight on the Commonwealth of Learning. Commonwealth of Learning that was created by the Commonwealth heads of state many years ago has actually always been in this space of online learning, even before most of us caught up with it, if you know what I mean. They were fairly active in this field of online distance learning and sort of using a blended model of distance distance and online learning along with workplace learning. And so now that with COVID, I think I'm not, it's not news to any of you that a lot of our programs have pivoted very quickly to online format. And the new way of doing training and skills and even education is the blended format, and it's not an easy pivot sometimes, particularly if you're trying to reach disadvantaged youth who may be in remote areas in very low bandwidth with hardly any access to the internet. So how do you do this? And I remember when I first was talking to Terry, I was struck by some examples that she was sharing with me about how some of the learning and the skills, that the work that they have done, particularly on teaching construction skills in Nigeria, or woodworking skills in Zambia, or teaching young kids to repair cell phones in Tuvalu. And I was struck by, how do you do this? Like, how do you teach something that sounds so hands-on, like construction and woodworking and cell phone repair? Like, you literally have to be in the same room to teach it. But how do you do this? And can you do this effectively? And so I'm delighted that today we'll be getting more into this question of how do you teach some really practical skills which are so necessary for our young people to have in order for them to have viable economic livelihood opportunity. So I'm delighted to introduce Terry Neal. She's education specialist and in the technical and vocational skills development at the Commonwealth of Learning. So she will kick it off today. I'll hand it over to her to share a few insights from their work. And then I'm also so delighted that Phyllis Kasan-Konoma, who is Director Development Division of the TVET Training Authority in Zambia, has also joined us, and will share some insights on their work in Zambia. And Ibrahim Abdul, who is Director of the Flexible Skills Development, I like the word flexible skills, at the Yaba College of Technology in Nigeria. So we get a rich sort of a perspective of what does it mean to actually teach practical skills in a blended format, and can you do it, and what might be some things that actually don't work even. And so we're hoping to have a candid discussion today. So over to you, Terry. I hope you're connected. I see that you're connected, but maybe you can take it from here now.
Thank you, Namita. And can everybody see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on a subject close to my heart. I won't share my video, and you can see me later. As Namita said, I work at the Commonwealth of Learning, and the key point I want to make here is that this organization was set up 30 years before COVID. And at that time, our focus was only on distance learning, not online learning, because online learning didn't exist. But we have always sought to understand and apply the potential for distance learning to solve the education challenges facing the developing world. Why distance learning? So that we can increase access through flexibility and affordability. And this has been proven with the Open University model. When COAL came into being, there were 10 open universities in the world. Right now, there's more than 70 in Asia alone. There's a new one being developed in Kenya and another one in Ghana. And these have proven the potential of scale and affordability. IGNU has 4 million learners. The University of South Africa, which is 150 years old, has about 400,000 learners. And before COVID, 40% of higher education students in South Africa were studying by distance. National Open University of Nigeria is similar. And the model's also been proven in the open schooling space, particularly for second chance adult learners. But what about TVET, Open TVET? As everybody here knows, there's definitely a need for it. TVET is acknowledged in Sustainable Development Goal 4, and these 3 labour market challenges mean that we need to increase access to TVET as quickly as possible as a globe. COVID has only exacerbated the situation, increasing the number of full-time equivalent jobs lost, but also offering a real opportunity, as Namita said, that suddenly everybody else is aware of the potential for online learning as well. So when we look for examples of open TVET, Australia and New Zealand, where I come from, are good examples. In 1910, the then Sydney Technical Institute started training health workers by correspondence because there was a rapid need in response to a typhoid epidemic. 7 years later, they had 20 more courses with correspondence plus workshops in rail cars. The Open Polytechnic began in 1947 in New Zealand as a correspondence institute to supplement apprenticeships in rural areas, farming being such an important part of New Zealand's economy, where they could still get strong theoretical support without needing to be near a physical campus. And this model is embedded in the New Zealand's present industry training, such as through the Building and Construction Industry Training Organisation, where there's a blend of distance for theory and workplace learning. So when I arrived at COAL 2.5 years ago, I used that experience from New Zealand as the basis for our skills and demand model. So Namita is correct that COAL has been supporting TVET institutes to blend on-campus and distance learning for 30 years, but this workplace learning plus online learning model is new for COAL. And the essence of it is we want learners like all of you to have increased employment. But the way to do it is TVET and industry collaboration, where they jointly train, design and develop workplace plus online learning experiences. The guts of it is that we will create open education resources that can be reused and repurposed so that we can scale it as quickly and as broadly as possible. We're working with national qualifications so that it is that have been developed with industry so that we have that demand, but also can tap into the quality assurance and some desire to influence government so that it's sustainable and spreads. The 3 projects, Namita has already touched on these. The key points here are that there is always a TVET and an industry partner, that there's evidence that the skill is in demand, and that we're starting with pilots, but we have our eye on scale. We're wanting to increase access through flexibility and affordability. Co-design is at the heart of workplace plus online learning for 3 reasons, because we want the buy-in of the people that will be involved. We talk about investing in relationships, not infrastructure. Secondly, if you're going to co-deliver, then you both need to be on the same page in terms of what the design is. And also, there's different experiences and skills that the 2 partners can bring to the process. So there's the high-level design, the assessment process and the tools, the learning activities and digital resources. And they need to agree who's going to do what when in supporting the learners. Work together to build capacity, and COAL is heavily involved here. And we are walking the talk. We're using workplace plus online learning to build the capacity. And the TVET institutes train the supervisors in the workplace and also in how to assess. I want to talk about practical skills pedagogy before touching on the core part of my presentation, how far can we go online? So when we're developing practical skills, it's about taking that skill and learners moving from where it is difficult and conscious to innate. So there's the need for lots of practice and building muscle memory. And TVET practitioners in the practical skills space are increasingly looking to sports training, which tends to be better resourced for research, to understand how we build that muscle memory. But it's not just about the doing, it's also about how to think. And yes, there's an element of theory, but it's also this experience. Like the mechanic will take your vehicle for a drive to assess what the problem might be and to make sure that they think that it's fixed. And there's problem solving for the different aspects, that because there's so many similar things, but none of the problems are exactly the same. And in TVET, there's this how to be attitude, like customer service and professionalism, but also this craftsmanship, this pride in what you're doing, this identity that I am a builder, I am a baker. And then the main way that this happens is to observe somebody doing it and then imitate them and practice and practice and practice with getting feedback from a supervisor, maybe from your peers and from yourself, learning to reflect and assess whether you're doing the job well. And a practical skill has been achieved when a woodcutter can feel the wood, when a baker can read the dough. So what does this mean online? Well, observation is easy. We can do videos, and we're using those a lot in our model. You can use imitation a little bit through simulations and virtual reality. And one of the real strengths of these systems is that you get the automated feedback, and they can give you stepwise introduction to complex processes. So you don't have to be overwhelmed by it all at once. Gamification is another strength of these systems, because you can sort of get a bit of competition going on, and you can support an experience that might not be available in a workshop or a workplace. But they require a lot of equipment. As you can see from the pictures here, it's not just you put a learner in front of a screen and your simulation is ready to go. They are very resource intensive, both in their development and their use. Online is good for having support resources for the practical skills. So checklists, processes, instructions for what to do, templates to use, manuals to look up, just-in-time information available as you're doing the practical. And they are brilliant for portfolios of evidence of competence. And I think this is where online is really coming into its own, because we can collect digital evidence, particularly as mobile phones become available ubiquitously. But I would argue that only real materials offer that practice that's necessary to feel the wood, read the dough, and get that experience, except when the real materials are digital. So if you are learning graphic design or computer programming, or where there's not really real materials like business skills, then online can do it 100%. You'll notice in our model that we are not using simulations or virtual reality or augmented reality for the reasons I list here. They're still imperfect. The cost is prohibitive. I'm not aware of any openly licensed options. If anyone out there knows some, please put it in chat and we'll grab them and start using them. And it's not just the cost to use, like the equipment, but also the data and the devices that people need. So we're relying on the workplace context for that affordable practice until you get to be a real craftsman. But long term, I think they could be a wonderful supplement. So what are we actually doing to develop this online experiences? In Zambia and Nigeria, we're at the stage of developing the digital resources. So for practical skills development, we're developing the online videos for demonstration and then have resources, instructions, and some support from the TVET institution happening virtually. but we're relying on the workplace for the imitation practice feedback and the main support from the people in the workplace. I don't think I made it clear that for these two countries, the workplaces are informal apprenticeships. So another reason to work closely with the industry partner is to build their capacity in being able to do all these things. The practical assessment of workplace activities and getting digital evidence of that is another core way that we are using online. We're using online for the theory and also to support learners to understand that. The assessment will be online, again, trying to automate that as much as possible with multi-choice quizzes to bring the costs down, but also supporting it with professional conversations. And all of our materials will be openly licensed so that they can be reused and repurposed by others. This is the template that we're using for a constructive alignment process. So we start with the standard that comes from the national qualification. Then we think, how will we assess so that, what is it that the learner needs to be able to provide as evidence of competence? And then design the activities that are the process by which we will support learners to be able to show that sort of competence in that way. And then what are the resources that we need in the online space that we either already have or to create to support those activities? And we're trying to use images and videos as much as possible, recognizing the lower literacy of some of our learners. So you can see here that the multi-choice quiz will be giving them different visuals to show that knowledge. And here you can see what this translates to on the Moodle side. And you can see down the right-hand side that this maps back to the SARA template that was developed. For Tuvalu, we're partnering with the Building and Construction Industry Training Organisation in New Zealand, and they already had the materials. So we've been able to go straight to starting. We went straight to training the workplace assessors, and these learners are actually started training this week. Another challenge that our learners face is that the cost of data is a significant factor for them. So COAL has what we call Aptus, which is where we can have the materials on a device such as you can see in the picture, and the learners are able to access that without using data, and particularly in the informal apprenticeship setting where there are a lot of tiny businesses all in the same physical location. This works well. So the learning design is thinking, when do they need to be online and when can they be offline? And this frees us up particularly to use videos a lot. Otherwise, the cost of data would be prohibitive. But there are still times when the learners need to be online so that the TVET institution can be tracking how they are going. We're also, as I said, working with the national TVET systems. And at the moment in Nigeria and Zambia, they are not willing to trust the evidence, online portfolio of evidence. The New Zealand system, as long as it's been validated that it's the students' work, is able to do that. And that's the long-term vision, because that actually will help increase flexibility and affordability. So one of the things that's in our model is seeking to bring government agencies with us. And we're doing that through their involvement in advisory groups, webinars, launch events, and also a robust monitoring and evaluation system. So in conclusion, I would argue that online development of practical skills is not yet possible, except where there's digital skills, but we can assess practical skills at a distance. We can train at a distance in TVET if we use workplaces, and that will offer us the opportunity to rapidly increase access through affordability and flexibility. That simulations and VR hold potential, but they're not there yet, and we need to work together on openly licensed versions. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Terry. That was fascinating. I see some questions already coming up in the chat box, and I encourage everyone to please use the chat box freely, and hopefully we'll have some time in the end for questions. I want to now hand it over to you. Phyllis, are you going next, or is Ibrahim?
It'll be Doton. Doton is next.
Okay.
Doton is next. I'm coming after Doton.
Sorry, I just need to stop sharing that and then share.
All right. Okay, I will be talking about the perspective of Yaba College of Technology in teaching practical skills online. But briefly, let me just talk about Yaba College of Technology. We've been on for over 70 years. We have several departments and programs online. Next slide. We have almost 70 programs for now, and about over 20,000 students. But practically, we've been using face-to-face model since inception. But in 2016, when we started a relationship with Commonwealth of Learning, that was when we established the Flexible Skills Development Center. And the center now brings about blended mode of learning into the college, where we use the online model with the face-to-face model. And this center have been able to work with different departments, next slide, to develop programs. We develop skills training, various aspects of skills training, and we actually train both the formal and the informal training. We have several programs that we've done. We've done snail rearing, vegetable farming, and so on and so forth. Most of these we use the blended learning model. We normally use our learning management system, the module, as you can see there. But then we discovered that we have to use the social media platforms also to engage our learners for effectiveness. Using the learning management system alone does not give us the interaction we want, that we need to do for learners who have been used to 100% face-to-face. So we used that, but when COVID started, we had to go online when there was lockdown. Next slide. We then had to do everything online, at least during the lockdown. Then from there, we now realized that we may not be able to do the whole thing online. We had to break down our programs into basics. We have the basic class, we have the intermediate class, we have the master class. So the introductory class we did successfully online, but not without challenges. We have challenges of learners not showing up. You online, when you have synchronous learning, you discover that majority of them are either having power problems or problems with their data and so on and so forth. So we had to do we have to manage with very low performance. We had probably less than 30% completion. A lot of people showed interest in this program, but they couldn't actually cope. So we have seen from there that we have to find a way by which we will bring in the practical aspects, especially since we cannot do deep practicals online. Also, we cannot even judge their competency online. We tried using videos. We used a lot of graphics, asking them to send down their own videos too, but it's very difficult to assess their competency through the online mode. And that was why when we keyed into the skill in demand model, whereby we had to use the workplace learning to complement the online learning. And we are very much passionate about this next slide, about this model, because we discover that we can actually use the online for the theory and then complement it with competency-based learning, and also combine the workplace learning with it. So with the skill in demand model, we are so much comfortable that we are working with the Commonwealth of Learning in developing a skills program, as mentioned earlier by Terry. And next slide, you can see from our presentation that we are planning. We have been working on training, apprenticeship training in mobile phone repairs and also computer repairs. It's been exciting a lot, working with the industry, co-developing the materials, co-developing the resources, and then co-implementing the training. And that has been a very good area for us. We actually are passionate about this, and we believe that the model can work a lot in youth employment. And that is why we are championing it across the country. We've organized webinars in order to promote this model, that we believe that combining the online learning with the workplace learning can actually bridge the gap between the industry and the academia that we've been shouting about, and can also give us what we are actually looking for in terms of achieving competency and using the blended model effectively. And that is what we have been doing. For us as an institution, we have been able to, partnering with CALL to do this, we have been able to develop capacity of our of our staff, our lecturers, from 100% face-to-face lecturing to the blended model. But that is still an ongoing thing. And we are also been able to partner with the industry in order to work on skills that will help. Most of the time you have the accusations that products of TVET institutions are not employable because they are not meeting the demand of the market. But with this model, we are making them very, very employable, and that is our joy in working with this model. We've been having contacts, and we believe we can scale up and also move away from only the training that we are focusing now, so that we can also focus on other training like construction, like auto workshop. We've been working on that, and so far it's been eventful, and the experience is good. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dalton. That was so inspiring and very insightful. And thanks also for flagging one of the most common challenges with such formats, is that you can't keep track of the no-show. Like, your beneficiaries and your youth will not show up and will not finish the curriculum, and the dropout rates is higher. So thanks for flagging that challenge, because that's one thing that we noticed too. Is a common constraint. Over to you, Phyllis.
Thank you so much. I can just say hello to everyone. Let me just have my slides shared. Thank you so much. So, like it has already been mentioned, I'm coming from TVET, and we just want to give our perspective on the workplace plus online model. That seems to be very innovative. So about TVET, Yes, TVET was established in 1998 by an Act of Parliament. It's actually a regulatory body, an implementing agency for the Zambian government, and this statutory body oversees technical and vocational education training implementation in Zambia. The core functions of TVET include quality assurance of TVET, curriculum and training systems development, examinations, assessments, and certification. I'm coming from the development division, where we basically look at curriculum and training systems development. So our training systems under our Zambian TVET are mostly the institutional-based, workplace-based, TVET learnership scheme, open, distance, and flexible training. These are the 4 models that we are currently overseeing. But I will still mention to say the dominant mode of providing TVET in Zambia is still through the traditional face-to-face, which is institutional based. As you can see, practicals are still done in workshops at the training institutions, and as it were, TVET programs are mostly practical. So 70% of the time for these practical courses are actually workshop-based, while 30% is theoretical. Move to the next slide, Terry. So then, what are the challenges in using the other existing training models? We are saying, yes, the challenges that brought by COVID-19 and a pandemic that we all know provided actually an opportunity for the entire TVET to enhance provision of TVET through other models that include the e-learning, the online learning. But then we are saying the dominant one has been the face-to-face. So really the challenges that have been faced have been the practical nature of TVET programs, like I said, where 70% is practical and 30% theoretical. Then most of our trainers do not have the online facilitation skills, and this also includes the learning materials that can be used for practical programs. When you look at a learning material like a module, it's easier for our trainers to actually come up with learning modules that are purely theoretical, but we are looking at practical programs. Then also the lack of ICT infrastructure, including e-learning platforms, has also been a very big challenge. The connectivity issues, the expenses that go with all this has been a very big challenge, which really, even when institutions want to offer their programs online, this has been a big challenge. So according to our TVET annual report, only 7.5% of our institutions have adopted the ODFL, the open and flexible learning, with only 7.8% of the learners under this approach. But then even when we say ODFL, there's still a blend where during residentials, that's when the practicals are usually offered to these trainees. Next slide. Therefore, the workplace plus online training model seems to be quite innovative, and I'm happy to mention that I've been part of this project, which started slightly before the COVID-19 pandemic through a pilot project at LTBC, which is a TVET registered institution in Zambia. The program that is being offered under this pilot study is the joinery, where we have wood machining, carpentry, and upholstery skills. So this is a curriculum developed by TVET. So it's actually where the training model that is used is not among the ones that we mentioned, the 4, but it seems to have a blend of a bit of open distance and learning and also the workplace learning. So what are the achievements that TVET has actually recorded from this project? Since we know that it's being piloted under a TVET registered institution, therefore we've been supporting and really just monitoring what is going on. So we noted that the project is under a partnership with an informal sector where we have furniture making. We can go to the next slide, Terry, sorry. Yes, the achievements have been recorded. The partnership with industry, and we are happy that this partnership is actually with an informal sector operators, where we are seeing a lot of things that can happen. And as TVET, we are also being flexible to ensure that even when we are applying the quality assurance processes, we just want them to have the basic infrastructure and also the machinery that can still help them in their training. And from the institution, we've seen that the capacity building for college staff in learning and media design, which is key to the OER development, has really been achieved successfully. Like I said, we've had the challenge of having learning materials and learning resources that can still speak to the practical programs. But through the consultants that has been done by CORE, the learning and media design that has been done by the institution have been actually recommended. TVET will still quality assure them, but we are saying these will still be shared among the TVET programs and the other TVET institutions who still hope to offer practical lessons using this model. So the capacitated staff also will contribute significantly to the development of the OERs across other practical TVET programs. We have common modules like entrepreneurship, which this informal sector has also been trained on. The OERs that will be developed will still be shared across the other programs because this module is actually integrated in all the other programs. So the Moodle implementation course that has also been offered to staff has also answered to the challenge of the online facilitation and also just the having this platform where information can be shared. And apparently TVET, after the COVID pandemic, realized that to cut on the cost of institutions owning their own platforms and also developing their own materials that will be developed will be shared by the centralized Moodle platform that TVET recently established. So these achievements have been recorded, and TVET has been supporting and monitoring what has been going on. Therefore, we are saying practical skills, how far can we go? Yes, it may not be 100% really success. We may not be 100% successful in having these practical skills trained online, but we are saying the workplace plus online training model could be a game changer to address the challenges of teaching practical skills online. How can this be done? We are still aware that theory can still be taught online, but for the practical skills, demonstrations can still be done through videos. And we are saying if these videos can still be accessed online, that is part of really just helping the practical skills being still collected using the online. This will be achieved by the workplace mentors being connected to the TVET institutions who can still just assess what is happening at an institution from a distance. But then, much as we would collect the evidence for practical skills online, the issue of assessment, because to get a formal qualification, usually one has to be assessed. And for TVET, like I said, the dominant mode of training has been the face-to-face. Even the assessment is just purely using the physical residential schools to have the assessments. Whether one has been trained using the ODFL, the assessment will always be done using the physical approach of sitting for exams in an institution. So we are saying this workplace plus online training model has given us some ideas of how this can still be supported, where the existing formal assessment from TVET, if we can collect all this evidence online, how best can we approach the assessments? So this is basically what this training model has still actually incited, given an insight to TVET to say this can still be considered, even the development of OERs. We are currently trying to develop some kind of strategy where we can have a policy on OER that can be shared across the TVET institutions mostly for these practical programs. So in conclusion, I just want to say, yes, the workplace plus online training model is quite an innovative model that can still influence the way TVET is offered, mostly for practical skills. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. That was really rich with insights. And so you're saying we can go quite a long distance with online, but even the final step of really figuring it out, did it work, did it not work, assessing whether students really got it, you'll still need some kind of face-to-face assessment method. And there's also a lot that we need to do still in terms of gathering evidence and perhaps even further innovating. There's a rich set of questions for all three of you, and I'm a little bit nervous whether we'll be able to go through all of them, but I'm going to try. So maybe I'll kick it off with something that I was thinking about as I was listening to you, Terry. So one thing really good about all of the three presentations and your model that you're talking about is how you're involving the employee. I think that's really key. But what's fascinating is that you're involving small, informal private employers that are usually not organized. They usually have very low capacity. Could you say a little bit more how you figure that end of the equation? That is, how do you incentivize these small-time, informal employers who could be carpenters or woodworkers or small construction companies? How do you incentivize them to actually take on board apprentices? And the other thing that struck me was we have a program right now. We have quite a large operation in Ethiopia coming up, which also is going to have apprenticeship. And one of the questions that the government raised to us there was, but what about sending these untrained young people to some of these informal sector enterprises who have machinery? Do the employers push back and say, oh my God, there's going to be damage to my machinery. These folks are not trained. And do you build in like insurance? So how do you, is that an issue that comes up for you at all? So could you just say quickly how you address that end of the equation, the informal employers? And while I'm at it, I'll probably shoot another two questions and then maybe you can take them in a bunch. So there's one question about regionalization of your program and whether you've considered hosting the digitized content on cloud to make it cost effective. And then another sort of similar question to the one that I asked, how do you deal with challenges like access to resources like machinery and raw materials, and also challenges around internet access? And you mentioned some of it, but maybe you could highlight that. And then another interesting question about, do you consider incorporating soft skills in your delivery model? And how do you do that online? And is there any insight on that? And then there are lots of more questions, but I'll stop here and allow you to address these first few.
So I know you addressed the question to me, Namita, but it was actually Phyllis, who was then at LTBC, and Doten at Yabatek, who found the industry partners. So Cole said to those institutions that we were already working with, we did a bit of capacity building, and then we said, submit proposals, and one of the key criteria is that you have to have found an industry partner. But I would make the comment that from my perspective, when I was part of the project design workshops, I felt that the informal industry people were grateful that somebody was taking an interest in them, and were very enthusiastic because they believe that they will be better off if their informal training is formalized. Whereas Cole has been working, at the same time I was working in Bangladesh with some formal industry people, and it was just taking a lot longer for them to come on board because so I actually think that the informal sector, maybe not 100%, but they can see the potential benefits more quickly, in my experience. But Phyllis and Doten, please comment on how it was when you interacted with them.
Yes, from the Zambian perspective, you find that the informal sector is mostly accommodating the younger generation, the youths. And as they try to look for formal employment and they fail to get that employment, they quickly go into the informal sector, start up their business, sometimes working with their relatives, and friends, and maybe just as a community. So in terms of machinery, there's an understanding to say when they work as apprentices. So there's somebody who they are still looking up to. They'll start from just helping out until they get the skill. So we realize that this is the skill that we can formalize in terms of training and maybe give them a qualification that can still move them and sustain even their livelihood to the benefit of others that really look up to them. This is the more reason that we've also included the entrepreneurship module, where we equip them with some business skills so that they have that alternative of either being in the informal sector, maintain their small businesses, or go into the formal sector if an opportunity arises. So in terms of machinery, I think they work as apprentices, and as such, they're under strict supervision by those that they work with, their mentors.
Okay, on the soft skills, I want to say that one of the things we actually did was to train the master crafts. Also, we had them undergo some training, and we incorporated the soft skills development into learning resources that we are developing. The issue of whether the apprentices will not damage materials actually cropped up. It's one of the concerns of the business owners. And in our own area, they are thinking of some little insurance package, which they will have to make the learners subscribe to. And it's one of the possibilities which we are considering in the model.
I'd like to make just two more quick comments. The first is I was very moved in the Nikadoli Zambian informal cooperative workshop with a person sharing his story of how he was plucked out of where he was as a young person and given the opportunity to be an apprentice. So I think this passing it on is very embedded in the informal apprenticeship sector already. And then the second thing, picking up on what Dotan was just saying about master craftspersons, that they also tend not to have the formal qualifications. And a resource-based learning approach supports a recognition of prior learning approach very well. So if somebody's strong in practical skills, they can pick up on the theory, or if they've got this bit of theory or not theory, they can skim through that part, but then plug their gaps, rather than a process where you have to start at the beginning and work all the way through. They can be much more in control of what they will learn when and which bits they can ignore because they've already mastered it.
That's a really good point, Terry, and actually it also addresses a question that somebody asked. So the next set of questions really is around your insights about how do you particularly reach disadvantaged youth who have almost zero formal education? Do you find that they are? It's hard for them to onboard a program like this? And then another interesting question, which is asking you whether you notice whether there's a difference between taking somebody who has basic literacy and basic craftsmanship skills and then taking them sort of a notch above in terms of their skill levels, or take somebody who has absolutely no clue about that craft and then onboard them and teach them something. So these two sets of people, do you find that there's a difference? Is this model good at teaching somebody something new, or taking somebody who has some basic skill and then improving it, and perhaps improving their income as well? And then another question from one of my colleagues about her experience in Senegal, where our project is trying to create an online platform, but one of the challenges we are facing is the need to translate it in local language, and the people who are not literate finding it difficult to access it. So sort of a common thread through all of these questions. And then let me stop here and let you respond to these, but there are a few more questions.
So again, I'll start briefly. I didn't make it clear that, and I said this to Namita when we talked about sharing our story, we are on the journey. We are not yet training people. But the reason that COLE is focusing on these informal apprenticeship settings is that these are learners with some disadvantage, but they may not be kind of totally illiterate in the way that some people were talking about. But I'll leave Phyllis and Doten to also respond.
Maybe I can still mention that for this, have levels that start from the lowest level, where 1 is just supposed to be practically competent, meaning they can still be taught. Sorry, the most important thing is for them to have that skill. We call that the trade test, level 3. Even the entry is open entry. Somebody who's never been to school can still be enrolled in such a qualification. Then, of course, as you go higher into our qualification framework, yes, you will find again the level 2 trade certificate, where somebody can basically read and perform the skill. No wonder I said we have a 70% practical and 30% theory. So our lowest qualification in terms of practicals takes care of everyone, even those that have never been to school. Even for the Nakadoli cooperative that Terry talked about in Zambia, we have a few, but they've learned the skill through just apprenticeship. So this still accommodates such people.
Our model relied on those who have some level of ability to read and write, and but we don't have any entry level requirement other than that. We don't expect them to have a school certificate or whatever. The moment they can read and write, they can easily flow in. However, we are developing the material such that there are more infographics materials than what actually reading a lot of difficult text. So we can accommodate those whose level of literacy is low, but not the 0 level. Currently, we're not focusing on that. But then we are making sure that it is not that difficult, that using infographics a lot so that we can easily catch it. And we blend the language. We can use, Pidgin English is becoming a very popular language too, but we are not using the local dialect. Right? But we hope to, introduce that in some other model that we want to do.
And I think it's important that we recognize that we often use literacy as a proxy for competence, and that we can, with multimedia particularly, where somebody can talk in whichever language they speak, or have videos that they can demonstrate competence without needing to read and write. But obviously we are wanting to develop literacy and numeracy for other reasons, because it's also important in terms of being a functioning citizen, to try and develop those things at the same time. And there's a real tension.
Well said, Terry. Absolutely right. I think now having some exposure to, I think you need to have some amount of digital skills just to be a good citizen, just to have access to basic information, not just to have access to jobs, but just to function as a citizen. So these are really becoming now absolutely foundational skills. we have run out of time. There are so many more questions, particularly some interesting ones asking you whether you have any experience with culinary or sort of courses that deal with cooking or in the agri sector. So I don't know if you want to quickly, and also entrepreneurship. And there are lots of other questions that I haven't been able to get to, but I don't know if you have a quick one-sentence answer to that.
In terms of the baking culinary, I think that so we don't have any projects happening with that skill at the moment, but the principle of finding an employer that is employing people in those skills, because so much of the access and affordability is around using them as humans to support the training and their equipment. So the model can be extended to any skill in which somebody is employing people to do it.
I like that. I like that focus on the demand side. So it's not just important to train people, but to keep your eye on what are the jobs out there that they will then later access should they have these skills. So thank you so much. A big thank you to the three of you. You were wonderful panelists today, and we learned so much from you, Terry, and from you, Dotun and Phyllis. Bringing in really practical ground level sort of experience and also pioneering in ways. So thank you so much. And I also want to thank all of you for joining us today. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get to all the questions, but if there's any follow-up that you need to have, even a one-on-one chat with our panelists, I'm sure they'll welcome it. So let us know if you want to be connected to them. We'd happily make that connection. And also a recording of this webinar. I know some of you are asking in the chat. We always share the recording and slides after our session. We usually circulate it, but what we are going to do now is to actually upload it. So look back on our website, check back tomorrow, and you'll see a recording of this session along with all of the materials that the panelists provided us. So thank you once again, and look forward to actually continuing this conversation in